my friends, the governor, the mayor, and my own senator from Ohio. Since day one, the Biden Harris administration has been focused on delivering relief to Americans struggling during the COVID 19 pandemic. The American Rescue Plan is an historic achievement that delivers immediate relief to those bearing the brunt of this crisis, including those experiencing homelessness. Today, I am pleased to announce that the Department of Housing and Urban Development is allocating $5 billion dollars in homeless assistance provided by the American Rescue Plan. Funding allocations will go to 651 grantees, including states, insular areas, and local governments through the Home Investment Partnership Program. These funds will help our communities increase affordable housing and services for people experiencing homelessness. Senator Brown, Governor Whitmer, and Mayor Woodfin will discuss more about what these funds mean for their communities. But let me be clear, these funds could not come at a more critical time. Homelessness in the United States was increasing even before COVID 19. On a single night in January of 2020, more than 580,000 people experienced homelessness in the United States. We know the pandemic has only made the crisis worse. So while Americans were told to stay safe by staying at home last year, more than 500,000 individuals and families had no way to do so because they did not have a home. HUD's swift allocation of this $5 billion dollars in American Rescue Plan funding reflects our commitment to addressing homelessness as a priority. With this strong funding, along with additional emergency rental vouchers that we will be announcing soon, communities across the country will have the resources needed to give homes to the people who have had to endure the COVID 19 pandemic without one. While this funding will deliver immediate relief to people experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness during the pandemic, President Biden's once in a generation American Jobs Plan would build on this relief with additional robust funding to bring the United States closer to ending homelessness and housing instability. Let me just say, ending homelessness is at the top of my priority list for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We know this is a solvable issue. It starts with ensuring that communities have the resources, commitment, and systems in place to identify and rapidly house people experiencing or at risk of homeless. That's what this American Rescue Plan funding will help us do. The COVID 19 pandemic has underscored just how important it is for every person to have a safe, stable home. HUD is committed. I am committed to ongoing collaborative partnerships with our communities to meet that commitment. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, Senator Brown from the great state of Ohio, my senator.
Secretary Fudge, thank you. It's an honor to be with my former Congresswoman. She was my Congresswoman where I sit right now until just a few weeks ago, and Vice Secretary of HUD, and thank you very much, Marcia. And Governor Whitmer, nice to see you again. Mayor Woodfin, good to see you, and glad you're doing okay. I'm thrilled to be in my first press call with our new secretary. Ohioans are leading the country on housing with Secretary Fudge, Secretary of HUD, with Marcia, with Joyce Beatty as chair of an important subcommittee on the comparable committee in the House of Representatives with Maxine Waters, and with my work on Senate Housing and Banking Committee. Throughout this pandemic, I've heard from Ohioans across our state about the challenges with housing. I spend much of my days on virtual roundtables talking to local leaders and workers and advocates and small business owners. I hear similar things from Ohio mayors the same kinds of things that we'll hear from Mayor Woodfin. Ohio communities need help to keep a roof over people's heads. We know if people don't have a safe place to live, it puts them more at risk of getting sick. It hurts public health. It hurts their children, hurts their ability to eat good food, all the kinds of, it affects their life expectancy. That's why we fought for this investment in the American Rescue Plan. Now we get to work with Secretary Fudge to get these dollars out quickly and efficiently to communities in Ohio and around the country. This investment means $200 million for state and local governments in Ohio. This innovative funding lets state and local leaders and community organizations in Alabama and Michigan and Ohio respond to the needs that we have on homelessness, whether it's getting people into safe emergency housing, whether it's converting a motel to socially distant shelter, or whether it's breaking ground on new permanent supportive housing. We need to get the word out to cities and towns and counties and housing organizations that this funding is available. We need to get to work with Secretary Fudge and President Biden to build on this funding with substantial investment in housing in the American Jobs Plan. Housing is infrastructure. Infrastructure is housing. We can help prevent homelessness and housing instability. We can build more and better housing. We can improve the housing we already have. We can put Americans to work on jobs that cannot be shipped overseas. I look forward to working with Secretary Fudge on all of that, and I'll turn things over to the governor from the state just north of mine, Governor Whitmer. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Senator Brown and Secretary Fudge. Glad to be with my fellow Midwesterners. And of course, my new friend from Alabama, Mayor Woodfin. Awfully glad to be here with all of you to address one of the most basic needs we all have, and that's shelter. Across the country, hundreds of thousands of Americans experience homelessness every night. And there are millions more who are one unexpected expense away from housing insecurity as well. That's why I'm so proud of the American Rescue Plan. It's making huge investments in the American people, including, as Secretary Fudge mentioned, $5 billion through the Department of Housing and Urban Development to create housing and expand services for people currently experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness. This funding will be distributed to hundreds of places, right, all across the country, in states, in insular areas, and local governments, including dozens of communities here in Michigan. Housing's a right, not a privilege, and I'm proud of the steps that the Biden administration is taking to make that value a reality. As President Biden says, help is on the way with the American Rescue Plan. For organizations on the front lines, this $5 billion investment means support to continue their work. For state and local governments, this means more resources to help people. For people experiencing homelessness, this means a place to call home. The Biden administration and Secretary Fudge are prioritizing addressing homelessness and taking tangible steps to make our shared vision a reality. And their work is just getting started. In the recently proposed American Jobs Plan, which proposes historic investments in our roads and bridges, pipes, and electric grid, there's also a call for $213 billion to go toward building, preserving, and retrofitting more than 2 million affordable and sustainable places to live. This game-changing investment in housing includes $40 billion to improve public housing, $27 billion to retrofit properties for clean energy, and $20 billion to help 500,000 families buy homes and start building long-term wealth. There are also proposed investments in VA hospitals, child care facilities, community colleges, public schools, all of which improve people's lives and enable them to care for their families and pursue opportunities. So you add all these things up together, the $5 billion to address homelessness in the American Rescue Plan and the proposals laid out in the American Jobs Plan, this will change lives and help millions of American families. At the end of the day, housing is about so much more than just shelter. It's about dignity and stability and opportunity. When people have a place to call home, they've got peace of mind to know that one of their basic needs are met, and they have a launching pad as they chase their future. Investments in housing are good for all of us, and they're a critical piece as we continue to build back better from this pandemic. So I'm grateful for the leadership of President Biden, Secretary Fudge, and Senator Brown. Together, I know we can spend these dollars and pass the American Jobs Plan and make a difference in people's lives. So I say, let's get it done. With that, I'll hand it over to Mayor Woodfin.
Thank you so much, Governor, and thank you, Senator, and a very, very special thank you to Secretary Fudge for your heart, for your passion and commitment in addressing and solving for homelessness. You know, everybody, over the past year, our community, our nation, we've been met with so many unforeseen and difficult challenges. But today, as the President has continued to share, I'm so grateful to say that help is on the way. That's why the city of Birmingham is both proud and grateful to accept $5 million from the American Rescue Plan to address homelessness. COVID-19 pandemic has only worsened. It's only worsened our nation's homelessness crisis. But with this assistance comes what I like to call new hope. I think it will represent a new start for so many families after such a challenging year. And I'd like to thank the Biden-Harris administration and again Secretary Fudge for their servant leadership, as well as their commitment to displaced families and for recognizing that housing should be a right. Housing should be a right, not a privilege. And I think about so many different mayors I speak to across the nation. Madam Secretary, she's been a mayor. She understands this fight around homelessness. And we have organizations we partner with all the time who are in the space of providing this service, that service, food, emergency housing. But if we're ever going to solve for homelessness, you have to provide long-term housing. And with this resources in the ARP, what this does is allows us to really, really address homelessness. And I'm so grateful to be one of many mayors across the nation that has the help from the Biden-Harris administration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Woodfin. We'll now take a few questions. To ask a question, please use the raise your hand function. If we don't get to your question or you have follow-up questions after the call, please email us at hudpressoffice@hud.gov.
We're good.
Kristen Capps.
Hi there. I have a question about the actual distribution of these dollars. The distribution will go to cities and states, but homelessness is typically administered through the COCs. Why is that discrepancy there? And is there guidance to help COCs and cities and states kind of get on the same page to administer these dollars quickly?
Somebody want to take that? I think I'll jump in. We know that normally that these funds are normally distributed in that way, but we just felt that we already have in place the ability to do the home program with the formulas. We just thought it was faster, more efficient to get it out to people quicker. So I think that that's really the reason they did it. But we do know that we'll be working with them in the future, as well as our communities will be working with them as well. And the other thing I would just say about that too is that generally these assistance grants that are typical are not generally providing capital for affordable and supportive houses. And this is. So it's a little bit different. And the other thing is these other programs are basically awarded through competitive grants. We wanted to use a formula that was going to get the resources out quickly. So that's the major change, that it's not a grant competitive situation. It is by formula.
I would add to that, if I could, what Secretary Fudge said, that we're on the phone. I'm on the phone a good bit. My staff, the banking housing staff and personal staff, are on the phone with a lot of communities in Ohio, and mayors are ready to go on this, and counties are ready to go on getting these dollars out. They know where the greatest need is, and they're ready to move on it. And Secretary Fudge comments about the importance of getting this out quickly is I think essential.
Erica Wright.
Yes, my question is for Mayor Woodfin. Mayor, you said that the city will receive $5 million from the American Rescue Plan to address homelessness. Is that separate from the $148 million that y'all are already receiving from the American Rescue Plan?
Yes, it is. So it's separate and apart.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Caitlin Riley.
Hi, I'm from CQ Roll Call. I just had a question about what the average grant size is, and if you could give some kind of concrete examples of the types of programs this will support.
Richard can take that one. Okay. Why don't you go ahead, Richard? Are you on?
Oh, yes, I'm on.
Go ahead.
So with regard to average grant side, it's a little difficult because, as the Secretary mentioned, these are being distributed through a formula. So the grants range quite a bit based on that formula. But we'd be happy to follow up with you to provide kind of the full allocations. And those are now up on our website, the allocations. And then with regard to the other question, Secretary Fudge mentioned a number of different uses already. Communities can use them to, and Senator Brown as well, can use them to build affordable and supportive housing for people who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. They can use them to purchase and convert hotels that are used on a short-term basis as shelter with the eventual plan to convert them to housing. Some communities can also use it to provide short-term rental assistance as well as fund supportive services. So there's quite a bit of flexibility, and it'll be really key for the home grantees to work closely with continuums of care and homeless service organizations to really think about the best ways to use these resources to meet both short-term and long-term housing needs.
Thanks, Virginia. And I'd also say that these funds are available for those people who are experiencing or fleeing domestic violence. And we know that in public housing and in homeless situations in particular, there's a high incidence of domestic violence. And so the funds can also be used to provide housing for those persons as well.
We recognized in Congresswoman Fudge, I believe it was the last vote she cast as a member of Congress, when we passed in early March the rescue bill, the American Rescue Act. It clearly was, I mean, it was money to rescue people from homelessness and eviction, and it was dollars for that. But it's also with communities making these local decisions. I mean, Marcia used to be mayor of Warrensville Heights, a city right on the edge of Cleveland. Not far from where I'm sitting, and she knows what mayors know their cities well, and they can some of the money goes to put people in temporary housing, but we also want to see mayors who have innovative programs and communities that have innovative programs do permanent housing as much as possible.
Go ahead, Mike. I think we see a Jordan.
Yes, Jordan.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jordan Hermany. I'm with Gongwar News Service from Lansing, Michigan. Maybe this has already been answered in part, but I know Richard said that the grants range based on a formula, but are we even able to quantify, for instance, like how much each state could potentially get from this?
Yes, it is on our website, and it will show you by city, by county within your state, and also that part that goes to unincorporated or those who do not fit into the formula. It's right there, and it will give you the total amounts.
Jordan, I heard you say Michigan. You're from Gongward, Michigan. Ohio is slated to get $200 million. So Michigan, being a less populous and just generally a lesser state than Ohio, Michigan will get a little bit less than that, I assume. I mean, as Marcia said, it's on the website, but that's sort of the ballpark dollars.
Thank you. I'll be sure to use a portion of that quote. Thank you.
And he said it and not me.
Yeah, Marcia can't say that. I can say that. Marcia used to be able to say that.
More.
Kristen, do you have another question? Liz Stark.
Hi there. This is Liz Stark with CNN. Just had a quick question about how quickly these funds will be distributed. Do you have a timeline for that?
The timeline is now. The funds will be coming out. Am I right, Richard?
Yes, that's correct. So we've announced the allocations today. Letters will be going out within the next week to the grantees, providing more information.
I think the administration has been very good at getting these dollars out the door quickly. You saw right after we passed the ARA back in on March 6th that some people got their $1,400 checks in the mail within a week or so, maybe 10 days. I think the first ones went out within a week. We know the child tax credit will go out in July. That's pretty fast considering the IRS has got it when they want to set it up on a monthly payment. And that's the date we aimed at here. There and on something like this, as the secretary said, we want these dollars out the door quickly on housing and on other kinds of things. So I think people can expect this help very soon.
That's another reason we use the formula, because we can get it out very, very quickly by use of the formulas, because it's something that we're very familiar with doing.
William Lucia.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. This is Bill Lucia with Government Executives Route 50. This is a question for the Secretary. You said at the top of the call there that homelessness would be a top priority for you, and that also you believe the issue is solvable. But I mean, there's obviously been an intense focus on solving the problem in many cities around the country. So I guess kind of two-part question, beyond this funding that's coming out as part of the rescue plan, how will you make solving homelessness a priority? What are some other steps you plan to take? And then also, I mean, why are you optimistic that you can make a great deal of progress on it?
I'll take the last question first. I'm optimistic because I'm an optimistic person. But the reality is I am working in an administration where the president and vice president have made it a priority and have basically said to me, let's find a way to do it. So we do know that with the resources we have in the COVID package that we passed in December and the rescue plan, that we can put into place now as many as 30,000 new housing units. With this home money, we can create an environment by which, as the senator said, we can do things like purchase residences or hotels or other facilities to house people and put them in stable, permanent housing. As well as we know what the president is looking for in terms of the jobs package, which was introduced last week. In that package, he has actually said that we are going to create, within the next 8 years, more than 2 million new low-income and affordable housing units. If all of those things work together, then I am very, very confident that we can eradicate homelessness and we can make sure that people have the wraparound services they need to stay in stable housing. So I'm very, very confident that that can happen.
And I would add, and I know of Marcia's optimism that way, but I think it's particularly well founded. I would add that the American Jobs Act we're working on right now. I mean, this what Secretary Fudge is doing today is what she can do today, but the American Jobs Act is going to provide much more in the I hope near future. Just $40 billion for public housing repairs, for instance. We know the condition. We had 4 years of a secretary that Marcia's done more in a week than that secretary did in 4 years to provide housing, and public housing fell further and further into disrepair in that administration. We see a president, a vice president, a secretary of HUD here, and secretaries of other departments. I spoke today with Rohit Chopra, who will be the new consumer protection director. He had a meeting. He said he had a very productive meeting with Secretary Fudge yesterday about what we need to do with housing. So we are seeing particularly good. I mean, I've been in this position on the Banking Housing Committee for several years in the minority, but ranking member, and I've never seen the kind of cross-agency cooperation that I'm already seeing from this administration. And Marcia's really, Secretary Fudge is really at the top of that pyramid and making things happen on housing and making sure people get access.
And I just want to remind you that in my opening remarks, I did announce that we're going to be shortly issuing guidance on the new emergency vouchers, which we're sending out. And that's going to help as well, in addition to what we're talking about today, the home money. And then lastly, and I think just as importantly, we're going to level the playing field for buying a home in this country. Right now, we understand how difficult it is for the average person to purchase a home. So you can imagine what someone who lives in public housing would need to be able to purchase a home. So we're going to make sure that there is access to credit, that we have some down payment assistance, that those who can afford to pay a mortgage are put in a position to buy a home. So between buying homes, creating new low income and affordable housing, and see, so there's so many simple things we can really do that we can do within this agency. Right now, we have banks and others who don't want to lend to people to buy a home that costs less than $50,000. Poor people can do that. People, low income, moderate income people can do that. So let's make a way to empower people to create a new neighborhood. You know, the housing stock in most communities, like in mine and where the senator lives, is good housing stock. We just need to put some care into them and people can live very comfortably. So there are many things on the drawing board, but I would say to you that the more access we give to new housing, whether it be manufactured housing and so many other things, we're going to make this work. I promise you we will.
I think what Secretary Fudge just said is maybe the most important comments of this discussion. That in a city like Birmingham, in a city like Cleveland, and in most places in this country, not New York City, not San Francisco, not Boston, perhaps, but there are thousands of available homes that could sell for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. Banks don't want to underwrite those homes. Sometimes people can't come up with a down payment. But when you think about it, there are. I'll bet you there's tens of thousands of people in Cleveland. We've never quantified that, just in Cleveland alone, let alone my whole state, who are paying more now in rent than they would pay if they could buy their home in their monthly payment. But they can't, as Marcia said, they don't have the down payment sometimes, and they often can't get financing from a bank because a bank can't make much money writing a mortgage for $50,000 or for a $50,000 home, writing a mortgage for 40 or 42 or 45. So we want to make that easier. And you know, there are so many neighborhoods in Cleveland where that will make a huge difference in making if people own their own homes in the Lee Harvard area and own their own homes in Slavic Village, it will mean we're more likely to attract grocery stores and transit stops and all the things that will make their lives better.
We have time for one more question. Sydney Brownstone.
Hi there, Sydney Brownstone from the Seattle Times. I'm going to fold two questions into this. One, do the dollars being appropriated now have an expiration date if jurisdictions don't use them quickly enough? And then two, there's some concern around unsheltered homelessness, that people experiencing unsheltered homelessness have been left out of the response to some degree, as shelters have thinned out their density, some access to some outreach services has decreased during the pandemic, and people are staying inside shelters longer. How are you going to make sure that these dollars get to people who are living unsheltered, which is a major problem on the West Coast?
Two quick things. The funds expire in 2030. So there will be, because there are going to be opportunities for people to build new housing to be supportive. So that can't happen overnight, but we know that plans are in place for it to happen. The other question about unsheltered, we are very, very familiar. And that's one of the great things about working with all of our partners on the ground. They know where people are. Shelters are not our answer. We do not want them to build shelters. We want to take people out of shelters and put them in stable, permanent housing. So we're hopeful that the shelters are going to go away as a consequence of what we're doing today. And that may be some other form of buying large multifamily units or converting shopping centers. I mean, I'm just saying things off the top of my head that could happen. But we don't want people in shelters because shelters are unsafe as it relates to COVID. I mean, it's a spreader. It does not give people the kind of dignity they should because people live in very crowded and overcrowded conditions. So that's something we really want to do away with as well. And I have, as a matter of fact, had a chance to talk to the mayor of Seattle. We're going to be doing some things together as well. And so we are very keenly aware of the situation of unsheltered homeless people.
Ms. Brownstone, one comment on the expiration date. You may remember, and I know that Senator Cantwell and Senator Murray were involved in fixing this back when the bill that the bill last March, 13 months ago. Much of the money, well, many of the benefits fell aside and just fell away, and McConnell didn't want to move on anything new. But you remember it had an end of year drop dead date expiration on these dollars. One of the things a lot of us learned from talking to people in our communities is they couldn't spend that money in a very smart, efficient, most useful way when they had that deadline. We were hearing that in October, November, December. So we wrote these programs now to have a deadline that was essentially almost not a deadline. I mean, 9 years out means they have plenty of time to do this. And that's the way we tried to write the American Rescue, the Rescue Plan, and now the American Jobs Act in most cases, so that we want local communities to have flexibility to spend this money in the most efficient ways. And Secretary Fudge is right. You don't want to build more shelters. You want to build more permanent housing so people will have that opportunity.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. For any follow-up questions, please contact us at HUD Press Office at HUD.gov. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Senator.
Good to see you. Marcia, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Good to see you, Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you, man. I thought you left us.
Stay with you the whole time, madam.
I didn't see you.
It's all good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for your leadership.